Hi there, I'm Coach Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And in this video, we're going to be talking to you about, are you over your ex? Well, you're watching the video, so probably not.
Before we get into it, I did want to say that Craig and I are available for coaching sessions. They are one-on-one sessions to talk about your situation, and they are available on the website, so you can order from there.
Absolutely. It's very easy to do. We'll be happy to help you out because breakups are incredibly confusing and so overwhelming, and man, are they triggering too. Oof. The tiniest little thing can happen and it feels like the end of the world. It's just really unbelievable how your life just feels completely upside down when that happens.
Yeah. So
how do you know if you're over your ex? How do you know if you've really moved on from that person and that you're emotionally available for dating someone new?
And likewise, how do you know if someone else is over their ex?
Yeah.
How do you know if someone else has moved past enough to be emotionally available to you?
You got to be careful. You got to protect yourself. Don't jump into something new. And you got to remember that if you're going to start dating other people, you got to think about their feelings. You don't want to start dating other people and then your ex comes back and then you drop them and you hurt somebody else. Like you've just been hurt. Right? So you want to act with, integrity in your life, because if you don't, those things come back to get you.
Oh yeah.
There are consequences. You may not feel them right away, but eventually they come back to get you. So be careful in your approach to dating new people because you might not be ready yet. We're going to talk about some of the signs that you might be ready to move forward, and some that you're not over things and you're stuck and still hooked on that person.
Yeah, and remember that these signs are both to self-evaluate, see which of these signs you exhibit, but also your awareness of others, potential partners, people that you go on dates with, maybe even friends. So these are just signs and behaviors to look for.
Okay.
And this is based off of Catherine Cullen's article on Psychology Today. She really did a great job of just really outlining some of these behaviors for you to look at. She makes some pretty good points, so figured we would talk about it today. And the very first one being trash talking your ex. And this is something that I do see often, and when it comes up within you too. You can sense it, you feel like you just trauma dumped on someone, you can almost feel the negativity in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to be careful when somebody's trash talking their ex. And they're often twisting things around, right? That they're not telling you the whole truth. They're leaving out big details and they're making themselves look like the victim when the truth is that they were not a good partner themselves. And you want to be especially careful if they're an avoidant, because they often gaslight and they'll make it seem like all their partners have cheated on them, have been so terrible. And then you find out, well, it's because they were neglecting that partner for so long they couldn't take it anymore. So there's often a lot more going on there than you realize.
And speaking with people, I find that the people who have moved past a lot of their experiences and a lot of the breakup, they tend to have a more balanced view. They might not say that they're perfect or their ex is perfect, but they might say, okay, these are the ways that I contributed, these are the ways that my partner contributed.
Yeah.
And there are people who are very narcissistic and who do a lot of damage, and there are situations where, it just is one way. One partner does a lot more damage than the other.
Sure.
So, those cases are out there, but seeing how emotionally charged that person is when telling the story, are they still involved? Are they still getting riled up? These are all things to look for and are really important. And there's that quote that says the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. So when you do see someone telling a story, recounting a story, and they're not trash talking, they're not taking character blows on this other person, but they're just presenting the facts. Hey, these are things that happened. This is how it affected me. And they're able to clearly articulate that. That to me shows some processing of that event.
Yeah. I mean, you can look deeper too. Like, are they talking about all their exes like this, where you're not seeing any accountability or ownership and they're just blaming? You got to be careful. You want to look to see if they're holding themselves accountable and owning up to some of the things they did wrong too.
Right. And if it is coming up within you, think about your purpose. Are you venting? Are you wanting to smear their name? Now, there are certain situations where it is important for women to warn other women. And there are online groups that touch on this, to protect women because they are a more vulnerable population, especially when it comes to, abuse in relationships. So that is something to be aware of. But really think about when it's coming up in you, am I trash talking? Am I gossiping with no purpose or to put my partner down, my ex-partner down? So really reflect on this for yourself. Another big one is having physiological responses when talking about your ex. Now, we do know that breakups can very well be traumatic. And with this in mind, people recounting traumatic experiences, it's not uncommon for people to cry, for people to have a big emotional reaction, palpitations to start, hands to start shaking, sweating. All of those things are normal, and sometimes our brains and our bodies will actually go back to the trauma, and it's almost as if we're re-experiencing it when we are recounting it again. So those things can happen. The more we work through our trauma, the more we work through that narrative, the more we are able to articulate our story, with truth, with conviction, and in a more calm physiological state. So that's something to look for too, within yourself and within others. Do you see somebody getting physically riled up when they are discussing their ex?
Yeah, you got to be careful.
And this is also something that can be tracked. So if this is happening to you personally, you find every time you talk about your ex, it's this whole big ordeal, you feel like you're going through the event all over again, just notice, okay, the times where I vent to my friends maybe 2 weeks after the breakup is going to look very different than when I'm venting to my friends 3 months or 6 months or a year after the fact.
Hopefully.
And if it's not, then that's also something measurable. Man, I'm still feeling all of this intensity when I think of this person, when this person comes up. That might mean there's still some more processing for you to do.
Yeah, definitely.
So those are things to think about, and not only intellectual processing, because sometimes we will try to analyze our situation, and I'm guilty of this too. I love analyzing everything. I like analyzing everybody and everything.
Don't look at me like that.
I do, though. It's fun. It is fun because you feel like you have some sense of control. But it's also important to process with your body somatically. What is my body feeling right now? What emotions are coming to me? Where does it come up in my body? So there's a lot of evidence towards somatic therapy being really beneficial, especially for trauma and things like that. So something to look into.
Another thing to think about is, are you completely avoiding the topic of your ex, right? Avoiding it is not meaning that you're over it, right? If you're just shutting down because you can't handle the emotions, you might be avoidant, but but seriously, avoidants do really struggle with that processing, right, of those feelings. They tend to shut down a lot more quickly. But if you're completely dismissing the breakup, that's not really moving on. It's suppressing it, and then those feelings will just continue to linger on and linger longer. You got to talk about it. Therapy's great. I was going to Margaret a couple times a week, talking about it. I had to. It was the only way to help me really heal and process it. And, it made me feel a lot better,
Right.
to have somebody that was really understood me and what I was going through.
And if you find that someone is very hesitant to tell you anything about their relationship history, or they just won't go there, that's always a red flag to me. Most people can summarize their past experiences to kind of give you a view of, hey, this is kind of what I've been through, so you know what to expect. You have an idea of what might come up in this relationship. You just know a general idea of what my baggage is.
Yeah.
So
some people feel like it's too nosy to ask.
It depends when. Maybe it's not good first date conversation.
Me, I'll ask anything, any question at any time.
So what are your major traumas?
Tell me about everything.
It is important at some point.
I'll do it from stage if I'm doing comedy too.
Oh my gosh, nobody is safe. No one is safe.
You know how I am. I just talk to people about anything,
Yeah.
I'm just a curious person.
Yeah.
So, so I would have no hesitation to ask somebody about their relationships and because I want to know. I want to know what happened, right? Because that's going to give me some insight into their relationship skills, their abilities, maybe their traumas or their triggers. I want to know what I'm getting myself into. And so I'm going to learn some of that from their previous dating experiences.
Right. And it can also help you to be a more supportive partner. If I know that my partner has been through a certain set of traumas, whatever it is, it might take a different skill set for me as a partner to show up for them.
Yeah.
So things to keep in mind. I think those conversations are very, very important. And if people altogether don't want to talk about them or just will not go there, it's one thing to take your time with it, right?
Yeah.
It's another thing
Yeah.
to avoid completely.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. A next one is attachment to certain items. So we talk about transitional items in different videos. Basically, these could be gifts, they could be pictures, objects that remind you of your ex. And they hold some sort of sentimental value.
Yeah.
So if you find someone really having a hard time letting go of these things, that could indicate some emotional attachment still there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it also depends, because somebody could have something that's very utilitarian, something that's very practical that they continue to use just because now it's like integrated into whatever is theirs. They see it as theirs. And
they got a nice gift.
Yeah.
Or they got a nice pair of sneakers.
Right.
And they want to keep wearing their sneakers because they like those sneakers. There could be no emotional attachment to it, you know?
Right.
They just like getting attention for wearing nice clothes or whatever.
Then other times it could be, they're looking at old pictures of their ex on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So everything, is relative here. But something to look out for. Also within yourself. Do you find yourself attached to certain objects or having a hard time letting those go or even putting them away? We're not suggesting that you have to toss everything, but just being able to push things aside to make room for new connections and new growth.
Sure.
Another big one is commitment issues. And this is something that I do hear from you all actually quite a bit. That fear to commit to someone new in case your ex does come back. So there's that hesitance. You don't want to involve yourself in a new situation because you want to keep the door open. And, that's completely okay, everyone at their own pace. But, think about where you're at in your own processing. If you find yourself really struggling to commit, years after a breakup has happened, how emotionally available are you and how much have you actually processed that breakup?
Yeah.
Others might be afraid that their ex will find out that they're dating and think that they've moved on. So that's another scenario in which, you might be emotionally attached. You're way too concerned about what your ex is thinking about you, your situation, your availability, that it's preventing you from current connections.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
Here's another big one. Talking to an ex frequently. Right? Sometimes it can look like nothing's really changed with their ex. Right? You gotta make sure that the dynamic of the relationship is changing, that it's not the same like it was. I mean, you ever seen like some of your clients with like, they're dating somebody new, but they're still talking to their ex, like that they were married to for years on a daily basis? Or they might not even have kids together. It's like, hold on, what's going on? Have you cut this cord at all?
Right.
You're like still talking and seeing each other all the time here. It just
Sometimes
doesn't...
still living.
Yeah, sometimes still
living together.
In fact, I had an email coaching that the guy was still living with the ex just recently. So yeah, it's really tough because the dynamic has to shift. It has to change in order for people to be healthy in a new relationship.
Right. And we talk about individuation all the time. Sometimes you got to individuate from your ex.
Yeah.
Being able to be your own person again.
Yeah. Sometimes people want to stay friends with their ex afterwards. And now, obviously, if you want to date them, we don't recommend it, right? Sometimes people genuinely feel like it's over. They want to have some kind of friendship there. But you got to be careful of what's going on, how often they're talking, and that there's no ulterior motive from the other ex because they could sabotage things or cause problems in the current relationship. So stuff like that's going to happen too. So you got to be careful with that. And, when there's exes in the present, it can really prevent you from moving on and having healthy connections in your current relationships.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to think about what's in it for you and what's happening to you now. All right, our last one is a big one. Stalking. If you find yourself continuously going back to your ex's profile and it's getting to the point where it's interfering with your life. You find yourself doing it at work, at home, at school, wherever you are. This could be an issue.
And the stalking gets a lot worse than that.
Oh yeah, it can be driving past people's homes. It could be showing up at their work. It could be checking on their friends and family. So keep this in mind. If you see this in someone else, if their ex is constantly in their search bar, in their previous searches, or if you find yourself, man, I'm having this compulsion to go back and check and look. Consider, okay, how far have you moved on from this? How far have you processed? So those are things that you want to consider. And sometimes people can care so much about what their ex is thinking and doing that they don't even care much about anything else. We're so concerned of what is my ex doing right at this very moment. We're not even thinking about what our mothers are doing at the very moment, right? So our view becomes so narrow, and we become so focused on one person who's not with us to fulfill our happiness.
Yeah, we're not really enjoying our own life because we're so obsessed about what they're doing with their life. That's a big sign right there.
Yeah.
All right, so a lot to take in. There was a lot of big points we covered in this one. And hopefully they've been helpful to you. Of course, if you want to get our help personally, you can do that on our website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Skype. Victoria is also available for Skype coaching.
I'm here whenever you'd like to chat.
Just click on her name to schedule with her. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And we will talk with you soon.